Ready, broski?
Yeah, I'm ready as it can be.
We need to set up a time sometime to catch up.
I know, I'm so sorry for that. That's my mom's lost. I'm so sorry. I never had a chance to, I was so busy, like I'm traveling so much, so I'm like...
That's what I'm saying, it'd be probably better to get you like in person.
Yes. Okay, I really hope that this thing works now. Do you have an iPhone? Or
I don't.
Any phone?
It was in my bag.
In your bag?
Do you need it for...
I just wanted to check on it again. Huh?
This is my phone here.
Oh, it's good. It's 30 seconds delayed.
Okay, so that's it.
Which is a good thing. But it's working now. It's 720 feet.
There you go.
It's live streaming. I use my MacGyver skills. There you go.
Yeah, I saw that.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is a Bosnian tradition that commemoration services for the Srebrenica begin with a hymn. Srebrenica, jedna majka, 10 fatiha. Each mother recites the Islamic Lord's Prayer 10 times. This is a symbolic and unfortunately typical for the number of children and family members that people have lost. One prayer for each family member. To honor us with her rendition, please welcome Lura Milaković-Zukanović.
Srebrenice, nježna ljubavi, suze majke, ne zaboravi, to ne plače ona, što je duša boli. Već što svoga sina čeka,
Thank you, Noura. Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Sudasa. I would like to welcome you to the 20th Anniversary Commemoration of the Bosnian Genocide and introduce our host for the program, Ms. Jasmina Amajlović. Dobar dan, moje ime je Hannah Sudasa. Dobrodošli na 20. godišnjicu sjećanja na bosanski genocid. Molim vas da ustanete za nacionalno himne SAD i Bosni i Herzegovini. Would you please stand for the national anthems of the United States and Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Thank you, Haris. Assalamu alaikum. Good afternoon. It is an honor to have you all join us at this memorial event, marking the 20th anniversary commemoration of the genocide in Srebrenica and Bosnia and Herzegovina. From 1992 to 1995, the Serb forces waged a brutal war on Bosnia and Herzegovina. They were reinforced by the fourth most powerful army in Europe, the Yugoslav People's Army. And they were fighting against the civilian police force, farmers, mothers, and children. On July 11, in 1995, this powerful army executed more than 8,000 boys and men in the town of Srebrenica. That massacre has been internationally recognized as an act of genocide. Genocide was committed in the territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina in numerous towns and villages. The capital city of Sarajevo underwent the longest siege of city in modern history, resulting in more than 10,000 deaths. Towns all over Bosnia and Herzegovina were devastated. 100,000 civilians killed, 20,000 girls and women raped, and more than 2 million people displaced from their homes. Concentration camps across the country with torture, murder, and inhumane conditions that we have not seen in the world since the time of the Nazis. Today, we commemorate loss of all those lives. We remember them with respect. We honor the memory and give courage and strength to the survivors to move past this tragedy. I would like to invite the President of the Islamic Community of Bosnians in Washington, Elvira Vojniković, to the podium.
Good afternoon, Dobar dan, and Assalamu alaikum to all of you. On behalf of the Islamic community of Bosniaks here in Washington and the entire community, I am privileged and honored to welcome you here to share with us this solemn remembrance. It's a very emotional day for most of us, so please bear with us and try to remember the people that lost their lives so we can be here today. Thank you for being here with us.
I'd like to invite the Hor Zemzem and the Children's Peace March.
Oh, okay.
Tvoje šere ti spavaš, mnogo ja to na put kreće. Grlimo se i gledamo koga sutra biti neće. Naše
Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman Jim McBride. Congressman, please enter the auditorium.
Now I would like to invite Imam Beksuddin Yusic, who was a resident of Srebrenica, to the podium.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I feel very bad because I was born in Srebrenica. My brothers and sisters in this city died. About 10,000 people in this city killed. I will talk about Srebrenica and I will talk Bosnian language. I think I will be strong. Thank you for coming here. Bosnian people is very good people. Draga braćo i sestre, poštovani cijenjeni gosti, danas je subota, 24. dan mjesec Ramazana 1436. godine po hidžri, odnosno danas je 11. juli 2015. godine po miladu. Na ovaj dan i ove godine u Potočarima u Srebrenici ukopano je 136 novo identifikovanih muslimana koji su ubijeni iz Srebrenice, Bratunca, Vlasenice i drugih okolnih podvinskih mjesta. Njihovo masovno ubijanje počelo je na dan 11. jula 1995. godine genocida nad našim narodom na kraju 20. stoljeća. Posljednje stoljeće bilo je najkrvavije stoljeće u modernoj povijesti, daleko više nasilno nego jedna prethodna era. Zar zadnjih 100 godina nije vrijeme ogromnog progresa za našu domovinu, Bosnu i Hercegovinu? Međutim, 20. stoljeće ostaće upamćeno po gorkoj činjenici da je krik never again, nikad više, iznevjeren zato što Svjetska organizacija Ujedinjenih nacija nije bila u stanju da ispuni svoju misiju i da zaštite narod od genocida. Zato ako zaista želimo spriječiti buduće genocide, moramo više učiniti osim prigodnih suosjećanja prema žrtvama. Moramo shvatiti dubinu psihologije počinitelja zločina, kao i ravnodušnost posmatrača genocida. Moramo ustanoviti šta je to što neke ljude koji su inače normalni učini da mrze druge ljude i narode, do te mjere da ih planski i sistematski žele istrijebiti. Dakako, i one ljude koji pomažu genocid ili stoje po strani i nijemo gledaju zločin nad nevinim ljudima, i njih treba proučiti i njih treba upoznati. Svi moramo učiti o holokaustu i genocidu, ne samo kao povijesnim činjenicama, već kao način da upoznamo našu djecu o opasnosti rasizma, antisemitizma, islamofobije i drugih primjera ljudske netrpeljivosti. Moramo poučiti mlade naraštaje da cijene demokraciju i da ljudska prava, te ih raditi da odbace mržnju, netoleranciju i etničke sukobe. Moramo naučiti da cijenimo vrijednost života i da poštujemo integritet ljudskog života. Moramo cijeniti religiju i poštovati razlike religijskog izražaja. Moramo cijeniti slobodu i poštivati granice ljudske slobode, jer moja sloboda prestaje tamo gdje počinje sloboda drugoga. Moramo cijeniti tuđi imetak i poštovati vlasništvo drugoga. Moramo cijeniti vrijednost ljudske časti i poštovati različitost kod drugoga. Pripremajući ovaj govor, tražio sam ajete u Kur'anu časnom u kojem se može prepoznati priča o Srebrenici. I našao sam ih u 90. ajetu u kuranskoj suri, sura El Beled, grad, u kojem uzvišeni Allah Đelešanuhu kaže: La uqsimu bihadal beledi wa ente hillum bihadal beled wa validin wa ma walad lekad halekna l'insane fi kebed jahsebu en yakdira alejhi ehad jekulu ehlektu malan lebed. Kunem se gradom ovim u kojem su dopustili da te protjeraju ili ubiju, i kunem se roditeljem i onim kojim ga je rodio. Čovjek je stvoren da se trudi u svom životu. Misli li on da mu niko ništa ne može? On govori: potrošio sam ogromno blago. Zar misli da ga niko vidio nije? Zar nije dobio oka dva? Zar nema jezik i usne dvije? I zar mu nisu pokazana puta dva, put dobra i put zla? Draga braćo i sestre, Srebrenica je grad u kojem se čovjek rodio i u kojem je živio od pamtivijeka. Srebrenica je grad u kojem se čovjek trudio u životu svome. Srebrenica je grad u kojem je čovjek bio sretan sve dok nije došao onaj koji je mislio da mu niko ništa ne može. Koji je rekao: ovo je osveta, jer je mislio da ga niko vidio nije. Srebrenica je grad u kojem je bilo dopušteno da se nemoćan čovjek protjera iz njegove kuće i da se nevin ubije samo zato što je bio musliman. Zaboravilo se, međutim, da čovjek ima oka dva koji može da vidi i ima jezik i usne dvije da može da govori. I čovjek ima puta dva. Slobodan je da izabere jedan od njih, put dobra i put zla. Dakle, čovjek ima slobodu izbora između dobra i zla. U tome se ogleda njegova ljudska vrijednost i u tome se očituje njegova moralna visina ili nizina. Jer kad ne bi imao slobode izbora, onda ne bi mogla tražiti njegova moralna odgovornost. Ne može se reći za nekoga da je dobar ako ne odustane od zla koje je mogao učiniti, ali ga nije počinio. Biti moralno dobar znači slobodno izabrati dobro u odnosu na ono što je zlo. Čovjek nema moralnu zaštitu to što radi nije njegov slobodni izbor. Samo se slobodan čovjek može podvrgnuti moralnom sudu. Neslobodnom čovjeku se ne može moralno suditi. Nigdje kao danas u Srebrenici nije tako jasna slika čovjeka koji je imao slobodu izbora između dobra i zla, koji je imao slobodu izbora između čovjekoljublja i čovjekomorstva. Taj čovjek je, nažalost, izabrao zlo umjesto dobra. Izabrao je čovjekomorstvo umjesto čovjekoljublja. Mislio je da je njegova moć iznad svake moći. Mislio je da Srebrenica neće biti moralna pitalica. Dakako, od 11. jula 1995. godine Srebrenica je više od grada i više od svog imena. Srebrenica je mjesto ispita savjesti za sve one koji su mogli, a nisu zaustavili zločin protiv čovjeka. Srebrenica je ime koje danas kruži oko svijeta da probudi savjest čovječanstva koje se mora suočiti sa samim sobom i između dobra i zla izabrati svoje dobro. Jer drugog puta nema za čovječanstvo ako hoće da živi u dobroti svoga ploda. Ne znam koliko smo i sami svjesni izazova i ovoga grada u kojem danas imamo slobodu izbora između dobra i zla. Naš izbor je put dobra. Naš izbor mora biti put povratka tamo gdje nam je naša zemlja i naša kuća. Naš izbor mora biti put vjere i morala. Naš izbor mora biti put mudrosti i hrabrosti, da jedni drugima pomažemo, da jedni druge podržavamo u nastojanju da Srebrenica bude grad sjećanja na sretniju budućnost, a ne grad sjećanja na nesretnu prošlost. Amin.
Thank you, Imam Yusuch. I'd like to call Alyssa Mirza to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman McDermott, one of the attributes of great leaders is the support they provide to members of the community. The DOBG Community Service Award was developed to honor individuals who make significant contributions to the Bosnian-American community through their time, actions, talents, and dedication. The honorees for this award serve as role models for compassion and community service. They have a passion for helping others in their community. They strive to make the world a better place. In 1994, Seattle saw the first wave of Bosnians get off the planes at SeaTac Airport. These refugees did not know their way to this new city. They didn't know the language, the culture, the laws, or the customs. My family was in that first wave of refugees. Shortly after that, this small community of Bosnians had their first opportunity to meet you. It was at the time of the first House resolution to lift the arms embargo on Bosnia-Herzegovina. This resolution was known as the Bosnia-Herzegovina Self-Defense Act. That resolution could have saved tens of thousands of lives. Bosnia's civil defense and local police forces were defending against the fourth largest army in Europe. And the Bosnians had virtually no weapons to defend themselves. This act would have given Bosnians the means to defend themselves against a professional army. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. Congressman McDermott,
This Bosnian-American community appreciates all the work you have done for Bosnia during and after the war. This is something we can never forget. You have supported refugees from the first day they arrived here. You visited Bosnia and made strong public statements to protect the territorial integrity of the country. You actively participate in the production of in Bosnia-Herzegovina. And you personally engage with the Bosnian-American community. Congressman McDermott, over the last 22 years, you have demonstrated that you care. We are grateful for your dedication and commitment. I would now like to ask the President of the Voices of the Bosnian Genocide, Mirza Veligic, the Chair of BOBG, Sabina Šuković, and the President of the Islamic Community of Bosniaks in Washington, Elvira Vojniković, to join me at the podium. Congressman McDermott, please join us as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to announce the recipient of the 2015 BOBG Community Service Award, Congressman Joan McBride.
Good afternoon. As I was coming in, the children were carrying in the names of the people who died in Srebrenica. And I thought it's perfect that you would have children doing that, and that young people who are up here giving me this award, because the point of this ceremony, as far as I'm concerned, is to keep the people aware and the history, aware of the history that we live in. I'm very grateful to Irfan Mirza, who invited me to come here, and I'm honored by this honor which you've given to me. We are a nation of immigrants. We came here, almost all of us, from someplace in the bottom of the boat, sick, poor, uneducated, all kinds of things. So you, the Bosnians coming to the United States, were just another group, just like the ones that my family came in 150 years ago. So we are all one. That's what e pluribus unum means, is that out of many we become one. And I really feel very honored to be here with you today. Now, as I was thinking this week about what I would say, and about this, what is really a profound anniversary of Srebrenica, I reflected on the grim reality that we haven't learned very much in the last 20 years. It's painful when you think about the ghosts of Srebrenica and now look at the shame and despair that we see unfolding in Syria and Iraq and a variety of other places in the Middle East. This is not an isolated incident. Srebrenica is not something unusual. It's something that again and again we fail to learn and prevent. And how many times in these horrible days, like July in 1995, has the international community said, never again? And yet still we fail to protect the people and the civilians around the world. How many more husbands will be denied a chance to roll with their wives? How many young men will be killed before they chance to become leaders in their country? Now, sitting here in beautiful Seattle, last week was sunshiny, this week we're back to normal, thank goodness. It's easy to somehow think that violence and depravity is something that is somewhere else. It's somebody else's problem. Even as we Americans, who I believe have innate and admirable ability to see conflict in the world, have a desire to see it ended, we get fatigued and we think, well, it's not my problem, it's over there. But this mindset, the feeling of powerlessness before the complex and diverse and grave problems which face our global communities is dangerous. And all you have to do is look back in our own history. It was only in 1941 that we rounded up all the Japanese in this country and put them in concentration camps. We did that here in the United States. So this mindset gets going in us, and what these events are about is keeping people sensitized to the fact that you have to look after your brother and sister because they are your brother and sister. The best weapon in our disposal is knowledge. You watch our television, you watch our handheld devices today, everything lasts about 20 seconds and then people can't remember what was on their iPhone or what was on this TV or from a month ago. So events like this are necessary to bring it back and bring it back up to people's consciousness about what's going on. And my rule for myself has always been, try to learn, try to understand what came before. Try to understand and empathize, and hopefully, as a result, to speak the truth about what went on. When I meet people here in Seattle, and when I meet them in my office, I'm always eager to hear what they have to say, because I'm learning from them. I can't be better if I don't continue to learn. That's really what it's all about. Now, the way we engage with one another, how we put ourselves in somebody else's skin, and look through their eyes and try and understand their thoughts and decisions and actions, that's the first step towards breaking this cycle of violence that goes on in the world. President Kennedy probably said it best. He said, our most common link is that we all inhabit this planet. We all breathe the same air. We cherish our children's future. I looked at those little kids, and I was thinking about my grandkids who are about that age. And I was thinking how much I care about what kind of world I'm leaving for them. And we all teach them to be moral. Now, human beings have made it possible to do terrible things to one another. But if we start early, if we make the effort to understand another's history and faith and culture, if we acknowledge that we're all part of one global community, we have a chance to prevent genocide again in our time. I've had the privilege to travel extensively. I've been, as you heard, in Bosnia. I've also been in Kosovo and have worked in Washington, D.C. with a number of people from both countries who come as a part of the USAID efforts to help build these countries back up to functioning well. And I'm always struck by the universal feeling when I return home from these trips, that I've witnessed something profound. Going to Srebrenica was a very sobering day for me, to stand there and look around and think about what happened here. And I've had the opportunity to witness all of that. And the truth can be heard over the sound of our armies. It's hard to hear it. We hear war, and we've got to go out there and defend America and all that kind of stuff. But in the end, we have to think about who is it that's being involved in all of this. All those airstrikes you hear about in Syria and Iraq are killing people, and on both sides, and it's not without consequences what we do as a country. And as long as we have a committed and thoughtful group of global citizens like yourselves to determine to speak up, I have immense hope for the future. I'm reminded that Martin Luther King said in his Nobel Prize speech this: we will not build a peaceful world by following a negative path. It is not enough to say we must not wage war. It is necessary to love peace and sacrifice for it. We must concentrate not merely on negative expulsion of war, but on the positive affirmation of peace. And as we strive to build a dialogue between nationalities and cultures and creeds, we will begin to understand one another. And you play a part in that. You have to play a part in America in helping us understand. I mean, I remember, I didn't know what the Ottoman Empire was. And I didn't know that the Muslims penetrated all the way up into the middle of the Balkans. When I was in high school, I didn't know that. It was only later in my life that I found that out. And it's something that we have to understand, that we've had Muslims living among us in all this time, and Bosnia wasn't just one kind of people, it had all kinds of people. The Croats were living there, the Serbs, they were living all together, they were intermarried. All of what went on in that country is something that we have to educate our own people about so that they understand what it means when we stand back and say, well, it's not us, or it's not them, or it's not our problem. Now, we begin to measure the consequences of our interaction if we start to think about this. If we unearth the truth of what went on in places like Bosnia, we must begin to understand that the victims of Srebrenica themselves and also better assuage the trauma that they survived. As I was thinking about this speech, I thought of Gandhi, who said, we must be the change that we want to see in the world. We can't let it be the next person's going to do it, or hope that somebody else will go and do it. It's part of what our responsibility as citizens and as human beings is to one another. And I want to thank you all for this generous award. I'm humbled by it because I remember the days when the people came to Washington, D.C. saying, you've got to do something about what's going on over there. The Bosnians weren't the only ones who came to my office. The Croats were there. Everybody came and said, you got to help us. And we didn't actually get into it until we got into Kosovo. And I think we all bear some responsibility for what happened here. And for that reason, I'm very honored to be able to share this memorial with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman McDermott, for your kind words. I'd like to invite Adam Mirza to the podium.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Congressman, Representative. Yesterday, our time at the Putacari Memorial, 136 newly identified bodies from the genocide at Srebrenica were buried. 7 of them were 16-year-old boys. It is the name of these individuals, the horrors they must have faced, the lives they represented, the opportunities, hopes, and aspirations they were robbed of, that makes Srebrenica such an important memorial, not just for the families of the victims, but for all humanity. A number of families from Seattle have gone back to Bosnia this year, some to Srebrenica, in hopes of learning about the remains of their missing loved ones. For without remains, there can be no burial. Without burial, there can be no closure, no healing, and no reconciliation. Compound that with daily intimidation and denial of fundamental human rights in the Republika Srpska, and you deepen the wound, instead of helping it heal. Imagine, in 1945, after liberating Auschwitz, we let the Nazis control the towns of Auschwitz or Birkenau. For his role as leader of the Auschwitz camp, Rudolf Hess was tried, convicted, and hanged. But imagine if after that, control of the towns where the Auschwitz camps were located was given back to the Nazi Party, and the Jews from those towns were told to return to their homes. Well, That's what we have done in Bosnia. Srebrenica, Prijedor, Visegrad, Rogatica, Bratunac, Banja Luka, and dozens of other towns, where residents were brutally forced out through ethnic cleansing. Towns where mass rapes and murders were committed by the Serb military under the political control of Republika Srpska. Control of these towns has been handed back to the same authority that committed these crimes. Even with the political and military heads of Republika Srpska standing trial in The Hague, there is a grave and justified fear that the rest of the genocidal apparatus within Republika Srpska has not at all been dismantled. Genocide denial runs rampant in the territory. There is no remorse, no regret. From the entire Bosnian War, only 136 individuals have been indicted to The Hague. Of those, 94 are Serb, and only 14 of them associated with Srebrenica. Documents recently released from the Clinton presidency include a memo from then National Security Advisor Anthony Lake, confidently stating that Serbian President Slobodan Milosevic and Republika Srpska President Radovan Karadzic could be trusted as partners in peace. A deeper review of the archives reveals that the foundational assumptions on which the Dayton Accords were negotiated were based on materialized misinformation and outright deception by both Republika Srpska and Serbia. The imbalance created by the international arms embargo on Bosnia fostered an environment where the more powerful side could commit genocide and mostly get away with it. Nearly 20,000 genocidal criminals are walking free in Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia, 20 years after committing the most horrible crime that humanity knows, the crime of genocide. Today, in the interest of neutrality, we dare not talk about the power imbalance that has been tipped in favor of Republika Srpska. The power to exercise authority over the very victims they tortured and tried to massacre. We fear that open dialogue about genocide will damage the relationship between Bosniaks and Serbs, between Bosnia and Serbia. What relationship are we trying to protect? The relationship that, even after 20 years of Dayton-imposed peace, have resulted in Bosnia being a crippled nation with no constitution, no clear delineation of powers between central and regional authorities, ethnically polarized corruption rampant at nearly every level of government, a nation so distrustful that every official position requires all three of the dominant ethnicities to hold each office, a nation where individual rights are compromised in favor of ethnic chauvinism. So on this important anniversary, coming to terms with tragedy in each and every Bosnian town is the first step towards healing and a prerequisite to reconciliation. But to do that, we all need to engage. We need to create a strong partnership within our community, with our public officials. At every level of government, we need the support of our neighbors. This is where each of you comes in. I'm not asking you to do the near impossible task of solving the problems created by Dayton. We already have people who are doing that. What we are asking you to do is help build institutions that raise awareness about hatred and intolerance and discrimination and how they can escalate the worst kind of atrocities that mankind can unleash on humanity. This forum, the young people you see on and off this stage, are the basis of one of those institutions. It is time for us to take stock and to ensure that we have learned lessons from Srebrenica and from Bosnia. Lessons from the tragedies of the past, for the politics of the present, and for the opportunities of the future. Your presence here today has given us the courage to remember and the strength to move forward. There could be no more fitting tribute to the innocent victims that we remember today than the solemn commemoration you have helped us put together. May those victims rest in peace and find the blessings of heaven upon their souls. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. I'd like to invite Mirza Velagic and Dolaz Okanovic to the podium, please.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being with us here today on this important anniversary. We're honored by your presence. Can the victims of genocide and the survivors of genocide and persecution succeed? Can people who've been brutalized, who've seen horrible things as children, as teenagers, as adults, do they have a future? What happens to them? Well, we haven't answered that question at this meeting. Today we have two individuals who have survived horrible tragedies as children, who have come to the United States, the land of opportunity, and have taken the steps necessary to build a better future for themselves, for their families, and by being here today, build a better future for us. We thank them for being here. The first speaker is Senada Ajam. She is an extremely successful business lady from Florida, but that's not why she's here today. She's here today because as a child, she spent the war in Sarajevo, which all of you know, hopefully, was under siege for 4 years, under horrible conditions. And she didn't hide in a bunker. She didn't hide, she didn't try to avoid the war, to run away from it. She actually took action. She contributed to the United Nations effort in Sarajevo, as faulty as that was, and as little help as it provided. Through her help, through her efforts, some help was provided to the citizens, to the trapped citizens of Sarajevo. So how did she get here? How do you go from Sarajevo to the United States? Well, through being a good student. Even through the war, she studied. Before the war, she had really good grades. An American university offered her a chance to come here. Her and a fellow Bosnian at the time. And she took that opportunity. Was she scared? Would you be scared as a 16-year-old? Yeah. But she realized that America for her was a dream. What did she have left in Bosnia? The country was destroyed. It will take decades to fix. And we're learning more than decades. So when she came to the United States to be a student, she took opportunities. She studied hard, she tried out different things, as we're all supposed to do when we're young. And when she found her true calling, her true passion, it was real estate. She might tell you her story about how she met Donald Trump and how her career got started. But she has maintained an interest, besides her professional success, she has maintained an interest in our community. She flew here from Florida to be with us today. I think that deserves a round of applause.
We also have a local guest with us, Vedad Mahmoud, who happens to be Boeing's Engineer of the Year just last month. His design for a software-controlled tail wing is helping the aerospace giant accelerate production of the 787-10 Dreamliner. Since it wasn't obvious whether design would work or not, he needed to convince 6 levels of Boeing management that it would. And although it took him 2 years, he did not give up. Vedad's success in carrying out his invention testifies that we should be persistent in relaying our own messages to others, despite however long it takes. Vedad understood that, like many immigrants fleeing war, Vedad understood that every opportunity was dear. especially opportunity to invent and to educate. Opportunity to educate should always be seized. When was the last time you educated someone? Vedad has not only educated Boeing, but has joined us today to educate us all and share his story as well as his thoughts on potential reconciliation for our future. Please welcome me, Vedad.
Firstly, thank you so much. It truly is an honor to be here today. And I'm here with, I'm standing here before you and I'm so proud. I'm so touched and I'm so honored to be with so many people who truly know what it means to struggle, what it means to survive, and ultimately what it means to persevere. Also, I wanted to thank Congressman McDermott and Representative McBride for all of your contributions to the Bosnian-American community. It means the world to us that you're here today as we commemorate the loss of so many innocent lives that had left an indelible mark on all of us. It is one of our deepest scars, and we appreciate you being here today. So my story is a bit of an unusual one. If you had told me 20 years ago that I would get to live and that I would get to stand here before you, I would not have believed you. If you had told me 20 years ago that I would get to escape sniper bullets and grenades and survive the siege of Sarajevo, I would not have believed you. Then, if you had told me that I would eventually get to work for Donald Trump, or that he would get to run for the President of the United States in 2015, I would have said, what's with that hair? If you had told me 20 years ago that I would be on a CNBC show called The Secret Lives of the Super Rich, while, by the way, I was living with my family in a tiny little 2-bedroom apartment in Sarajevo that was under constant fire. And instead of windows, we had UNHCR film, which is basically a plastic cover to replace the loss of windows. If you had told me then that I would be on this show where it's all about how the uber wealthy enjoy their lives and their toys, or that I would be on a Bravo, which is a network made famous by a bunch of Kardashian girls, I would have said, what's a Kardashian? So it truly is a pleasure to be here. It was not by coincidence. I had faced death so many times, and I came to a point where I had accepted it. Once you accept death, a whole new life opens up. I had found my purpose, and I had found a whole new reason to live. I found what it means to be fearless. After that point, I went to the United Nations armed only with the language of English, not other languages or not other arms. I said, I want to help. I want the world to see what's going on in Bosnia and what's going on in Sarajevo. I then went to find every single journalist who had any kind of reach. And I told them, I want to take you to see what truly goes on. I was so frustrated and angry that there was so much bigotry and lies dispersed by the Serbian paramilitary and by the Serbian, Bosnian Serb included leadership. it was really difficult that on top of the actual pain and fear of dodging bullets and dodging grenades, you had to listen to their lies. They were so obvious. It was painful. So I said, I want to show the world what's going on. I invited BBC journalists, at the time CNN journalists, including Christiana Mankur, and I said, you need to come to the orphanage in Sarajevo. And they said, why? I said, you need to see these children. They're infants. Their mothers were raped. They were kept in captivity by the Bosnian Serbs for 6 months at a time, so they can't abort the child. And then these young women, who some of them were my age at the time, I was 16, were sent back to their families because they knew that Bosnian pride is such that these women would be terribly ashamed and their life would never be the same. The orphanage in Sarajevo was swelled up with infants from mothers who were raped. And my heart ached seeing it. I had spent every single moment I could over there. I had taken every single foreigner, be it a journalist, be it a UN officer, to go see that, just so they understand what was really going on. I had taken journalists to rape camps. I had taken them to see gypsies who were living a really difficult life as well, just so they understand that the propaganda that was being spread by the Serbians was even like adding injury to the wound. We suffered enough, and the world needed to know. During my work there, I got a chance to meet US Ambassador John Menzies to Bosnia, who's an incredible man. He said, you know, I'm on the board of directors of this little Mormon college in Iowa. And he said, I've got two scholarships. I'm going to choose a Bosnian student, and I'm going to choose a Bosnian Serb student to win these scholarships. Because of my work at the orphanage and also at the hospital in Kosovo, where we were bringing a lot of medicine and food, some, by the way, most medicine that was donated by many different countries had expired, but we took whatever we could. And he said to me, I think you're deserving, your biggest goal in life is to go to the United States to study. So I got that scholarship, and I was faced with the most bittersweet moment in my whole entire life. Do I leave my family, who entirely depended on me and my meager salary of $100 a month? My father, who was wounded as a civilian? Or do I go by myself at 17 with $200 in my pocket, which was a lot, by the way, and in company of a Bosnian Serb? It was a terrifying choice. I went to see my father, who was terribly wounded. He had 2 shrapnels lodged, one next to his heart, one by his spine. And I asked him, Dad, what do I do? I can't leave you guys. And he said to me, he says, Nada, education is always the most important thing. He said, you go, we'll take care of ourselves, just go. I was crying as I was leaving. I was petrified in a way, but I said, you know what? It can't be that worse, even if it's Iowa, than Sarajevo. So I arrived to a tiny little college in Iowa called Graceland University. It's a school of about 2,000 students. And that school is now made famous by an alum named Bruce Jenner, or Caitlin, as some of you may know her. We don't know what the wardrobe was at the time, but the college was quite an interesting experience. Coming to America after you had just survived 4 years of hell is an incredible experience. You look at everyone and you can't believe how nice these people are. For the first time, you see people who are not trying to kill you, they actually want to help you. It was shocking. So I remember going to school, my adjustment there was quite laborious. I remember going to class one day and there was a landscaping crew and the lawnmower started backfiring. So the first thing I did is I jumped on the ground, I covered my head with my hands, and I was waiting for something to happen. I look up, and the landscaper is looking at me like, what in the world is wrong with you? This young man saw this unfold, and he runs over, he kneels, and he helps me. He said, "Are you okay?" And I was like, I was confused. Do I tell the truth? But how can I tell him about my traumas of Sarajevo and thinking there was a mortar about to explode? So I came up with a story that I had recently had a surgery that didn't go that well, so I'm just in pain. And as embarrassing as it is for me to say that right now, I had to come up with a whole bunch of little white lies so that people wouldn't think I'm crazy. Looking back, that adjustment time gave me tremendous insights on not only who I was, but who Americans were. They were the nicest people I had met, so welcoming. And coming from such trauma, I didn't know what to do except just focus on school. And I learned one thing from that. Some people may give you an opportunity, but it really is up to you to take full advantage of it. Education, just like my late father had said, is the most important thing and way to empower ourselves. It is the way for me to also pay it forward. The gift of education that Ambassador Menzies gave me eventually paved the way for the education of my brother and now of several other students that we had brought from Bosnia and paid for their education. Of course, they're not happy we sent them to Iowa, but you know, they'll deal with it. When you look back and you think, we had really tough times, but what have we learned from it? I think the key in reflection is understanding that past can be put where it belongs, which is in the past. I believe that for most of you, just like for myself, past a lot of times holds a grip on us. It is difficult to put it in the past and to create a whole new future full of possibility. But that is the paradigm shift that we have to embrace. We have to create a new future for ourselves and for the new generations of Bosnians and Bosnian-Americans who will get education and who will be very important when it comes to creating a new Bosnia that is powerful, that is not full of citizens who are still victimized by their past. I believe in a bright future. I believe it because I'm standing here before you and I am living proof that it is possible. I do believe that we can create a future that is bright for all of us and that we can live into that future and that we can create a possibility for other Bosnians. I invite you today to consider looking into how we as individuals, can impact change. We are way more powerful than we give ourselves the credit for. We have ways, be it through education, through employment opportunities, through raising awareness of what happened in Bosnia so it will never happen again. We have ways, and it is our responsibility to ensure that what happened in Srebrenica and that what happened in Bosnia will never happen ever again. And in conclusion, I have to tell you my little story of battling and living with my past. It took me years of soul searching to understand the power of the past. But I had decided that I'm not going to let it victimize me, that I was going to use the anger and sadness as a fuel to let me be the best I can be, and to live my life knowing that I will have given it my best. I had made a decision that instead of crying every time I think of my father, whom I loved dearly, that I was going to honor him by being the best I can be for him. And that I was honor his desire, which is education first. And use that as an opportunity to educate others. I am no longer crying when I think of my father. I am now proud when I think of him. And I am proud because I know that he lives through me. And I know that all of those innocent victims in Srebrenica live through us. And that every single child, woman, and man who had lost their lives in Bosnia will live through us, because we are the new generation. It is our responsibility to make it a bright future for all of us. The naivete of the Bosnian psyche that I had experienced during the war is going to be replaced with power and with strength and with children who are just aware. They have learned from what had happened, they know what had happened, and they're going to use it as fuel so that all those people who have lost their lives are going to live through them. Thank you.
I would like to invite Vedant to the podium.
Thank you very much. Well, maybe it's good now. Yeah, I prepared like a whole written speech, and then Russians put this veto the other day, so I just tossed it, just come up with something else. So life has to go on. So my story, unfortunately, it's a very common story in Bosnia. You know, basically I was 14 when the war started. My parents just kind of were able to kind of smell the war in the air. So they sent me to my aunt to Croatia. So me and my sister was 14. She was like second grade, and you know I had no idea that I was actually giving my mother final goodbye. So when I was in Croatia, we were only 100 miles away from my hometown, but for all practical purposes, it was like a world away. There was absolute communication blockade. Had no idea what was going on. And well, it turns out that basically the destiny of my parents was actually worse than my most pessimistic nightmare. I mean, at the time we thought we were going away for a couple of weeks and somehow we'll come back after things settled down. My mother was basically enslaved in one of these concentration camp. Omarska is actually one of the Auschwitz of Bosnia, and she got murdered, and my father was also imprisoned in another concentration camp, Ternopoli. So I come from a town that had like 20 to 30,000 people called Kozarac, and every single citizen of that town was imprisoned in one of these concentration camps. And probably every fifth person that I can think of is not alive today. They've been murdered. So, yeah, Srebrenica is a symbol of Bosnian genocide, but there are very many in the other places as well. And so that's very unfortunate. So about 10 years later, my mother's remains were found in one of these mass graves, DNA identification. I guess I was lucky to actually have a grave site and a place where we can go and visit. But 20 years later, they're still finding new mass graves, like the one called in this mine, Tomashica. They just dug out hundreds of people. So 20 years later, all this evidence is mounting, and Serbian politicians are continuously denying this. They're either denying it or they're sort of watering it down to a point where it's almost like an equal blame, And it's disgusting, really. It's very difficult to listen to. I mean, denying these genocides is almost like doing them all over again. Like kind of twisting the knife in your back. So a lot of these leaders, of course, I always feel that many of them are just saying, I mean, they're kind of acknowledging some of these events now just because they feel like they have to sort of meet these minimum requirements to enter European Union. But otherwise, they're pretty much proud of their predecessors, Ratko Mladic and Karadzic, right? So when you sort of look at it from that point of view, it almost seems hopeless, like hopeless for the country, because we do need to integrate the country if we want to keep Bosnia as one nation, right? So, well, I try to kind of look at it, with a more bright light and try to say, well, okay, you can look at it this way. In the last 20 years, there was like 10 years ago, they wouldn't even talk about genocide. Right? Well, today you'll have their leaders every once in a while show up at these memorials, maybe put flowers, right? So there is some improvement, right? So I'd like to remind people that, say, in 1970, about 25 years later, after the World War II ended, German Chancellor Willy Brandt actually kind of dropped on his knees in Warsaw in Poland at one of these Holocaust memorials. And I think by many people it was like considered as one of the sort of most genuine apologies for the Holocaust. So it took 25 years even for Germans to do it, right? So maybe we can expect something in the next 5-6 years from Serbian leadership. So Bosnians really, I personally really need this sort of admission of wrongdoing by the Serbian leadership. I really feel like they ought to stop denying this genocide. They really got to, take some responsibility. Think about some compensation for the victims and so on. So Now, on the other hand, I think that the whole civilized world also wants Serbia to kind of admit these atrocities as well, in the full meaning of the word genocide, because they want to integrate them into the world society and try to incorporate them into European Union. I mean, people want to do it, but you just can't do it because they have to come to terms, take responsibility, and so on. So I guess what I see for the future, there is some common ground, there is some hope, and the hope is that we want them to admit this. We can't even begin to talk about forgiveness until they admit what they've done. And it's in actually their economic interest and their national interest to kind of become a reputable member of the world community and European Union. So I see that somewhere down the road, we kind of have common interests. It's just going to take a little bit of time. Now, on the other hand, I believe that, can we sort of move beyond the genocide? Was one of the questions here, and I'd say it's hard to move beyond genocide. Like, as long as the last person who remembers this genocide, they will not be able to sort of move beyond. But we can definitely learn some things from it, right? We could try to become even better citizens of this country and back in Bosnia as well. We can sort of try to be exemplary nation, right? We have experienced this something in our own skin, and now we can be example to the world about human rights, about respecting minorities, about so maybe that way we can we sort of need to show the world that we're sort of worthy fighting for it, if you know what I mean. So I will give you actually one example. So we've been kind of known in Yugoslavia, Bosnians have been known to be most ethnically and religiously sort of tolerant people. And so I think we can expand that here in the United States. There was an example maybe last year where I heard some people trying to kind of unify against there was a law against same-sex marriage in this state, right? There was very few people, but I heard them saying we need to kind of join up with some churches over here and try to pass this prohibition of same-sex marriage in the state. And I actually got quite offended by that because I felt like my mother was murdered in this war just because she was fighting for some sort of basic human rights in her country, right? And now we've come to the United States to this, we've been accepted by Americans like we were born here, given all opportunities to succeed. And now we have some voices saying now we as the majority, right, are going to kind of go on to this minority of, LGBT people and try to kind of impose our will how they should live their life. That was extremely difficult for me. So I kind of voiced my opinion around here. So, I mean, it's okay to have your own feelings and teach your own family how, your children should be raised and what kind of a relationship they should be in, but try not to impose that on other people. So that would be a lesson for all of us here, that every time we think about any of our actions, we have to make sure that we're not imposing our will on somebody else. Respect freedom of other people. Basically let everybody live their life the way they want to live their life. And you live your life the way you want to live your life. So maybe even back in Bosnia, maybe we can start being even more tolerant. Like sometimes we have issues with Roma people or Gypsy people, right? It's been known. Let Serbians, if they want to beat up the Roma people, that's fine. We should really welcome them. You know, if we have a gay parade in Sarajevo, we should really welcome it, right? If Serbs want to beat them up, well, that's their problem. So we need to kind of start some kind of healthy competition with Serbs on maybe really make kind of exemplary nation. Then, on the other hand, I do believe that the key to really reconciliation in the long term is economic prosperity, right? I mean, busy and prosperous people, they have no time to hate, is what I really believe in. So maybe we can try to be economic examples to Serbs, we can, maybe we could replace their hate for us with respect by doing something. So what can we do from here, for example, right? Many of us have gained a lot of expertise in many different fields, Maybe we can form some kind of economic advisory council where a local politician from Bosnia maybe can, give us a call and see if we can form some experts to advise them on something, right? Or better yet, maybe we can groom a politician from here, from this community or some other community in the United States, and maybe have them go run for office, and we support them with money and try to make this sort of change go a little bit faster, right? So how do we, we can support somebody, and because ultimately our future lies in basically European integrations, right? If we go somehow get into European Union in the package, I do believe that this reconciliation will kind of go on the fast track. And unfortunately, we have a more difficult job here. We're trying to keep Bosnia as one unit. We're trying to preserve it, where Serbs are trying to destroy it. So they have a lot easier task to do. So we have to work extra hard to keep this country together, right? And I would re-emphasize Senada's point here about education. We have been sort of pulled back 10, 20 years with this war. And many of us here have opportunities to go to school, educate our children, and we have to really spring back, work twice as hard to kind of make up for some of that time. And so we should use this example of Srebrenica to, motivate your kids to do better in school, to volunteer more, to be better citizens. And I really commend some of the organizers here to organize an event like this. So we should let this be a motivation to, another young person here to maybe start something like, economic advisory council or maybe some kind of campaign to try to propel a candidate for the next elections or something like that. So yeah, with that thought, I would kind of leave you thinking, and hopefully somebody gets inspired by that. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Vedant. I'd like to invite Esmeralda Pusia to the podium, please.
I have the honor of introducing our next speaker, Joan McBride. She had served on the Kirkland City Council for 16 years, 4 of which were as mayor. In that period, she was the recipient of the Community Partnership Award for her contribution in creating Kirkland's neighborhood walking routes, as well as elected Official of the Year for her contributions in human services. She is a champion for the work she put into for parks, roads, youth and senior councils, and for the teen center. She is a community leader. Currently, she is serving as a representative for District 48 in the Washington State Legislature, where she has just successfully helped pass the budget for the state. Representative McBride has a very special relationship with the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina that has endeared her to this community. I would like to now invite Joan McBride to share with us her experience with Bosnia and Herzegovina and the local Bosnian community. With a warm round of applause for
So before I begin, and thank you, by the way, for that wonderful introduction. Before I begin, I want to just say we passed everything finally just yesterday. I have not had much sleep. So if I stutter or if I get a little off, this is my first term, and we have the longest state legislative session in the history of this state. So, by the way, do run for the state legislature, but clear your calendar. So I want to thank you very much for this opportunity to be here today on this 20th anniversary of the Bosnian Genocide. It is such an honor to be here. So a funny thing happened to me when I was asked to do this. Some of my legislator friends, some of the members found out, and I said, well, Joan, you're not Bosnian. Why would you be asked to do this? You're as Irish as they come. Why would you be asked to do this? They had no idea what my connection was. So today, I want to kind of talk about what is my connection to the Bosnian community, how I became knowledgeable about the war in Bosnia, and why a housewife from Kirkland in the early 1990s would come to care so much about a place she couldn't even find on the map. So let's just go back a little bit in time. Let's go back to the 1980s and the early 1990s. I was a middle-class housewife, mother of young children, living in Kirkland. I was involved in PTA in my church. My life could not have been more idyllic. But I had very little time for recreation. I had all these children, they were running around, so the only thing I really had time to do when they were napping or sleeping was to read. And I read voraciously. And I started on the histories of World War II, and of Germany, and the Holocaust. Now, while I don't remember the title of the book, and I can't remember the exact day, I do remember a certain book I was reading one night while my children were sleeping. And it was yet another telling of the beginning of the horrors that German Jews faced right before the outbreak of World War II. I remember the book told about how the time of the institutional abuse and murder, how it took hold in Germany, and how ordinary citizens became too frightened to raise their voices. They were too scared to object to the injustice. They became afraid for their lives and for the lives of their children. They thought their lives could be ripped from them if they stood up against this injustice and this incredible violence that was being perpetrated about their neighbors. And I took a look at my sleeping children, and I remember thinking, sadly, and possibly in a cowardly way, that would have been me. If I would have been in Germany and I had these beautiful children and I saw these injustices, but I thought my children or myself would be killed if I raised my voice, would I have done that? I'm not sure I would have, and that wasn't an epiphany for me. So what was my alternative? In Kirkland, what could I possibly do to begin to make sure that this country or my town or my state or my neighborhood never had to face that? My alternative was to ensure that as we went through history, at least this normal history of the 1990s, that wouldn't happen. So I decided that I would become active in politics. Here I am. And also on issues around social injustice. I don't want to ever see that kind of poison that happened in Germany and that was happening in Bosnia. Even as I was going through this epiphany, I did not want that to take hold in my country, in my neighborhood. It is to fight international hatred and violence, to fight the kind of nationalism that I was beginning to see and hear about. It is when ordinary citizens are afraid to lift their voices against injustice that a catastrophic events happen and genocide happens. So it was just a few weeks later after that incident that I learned of the genocide and ethnic cleansing in the former Yugoslavia. The stories were beginning to slowly filter into the nightly news. It was early 1993, but the news was coming forward. It was coming forward a little bit in the New York Times. It was on the BBC World News. I was beginning to witness yet another genocide in Europe. Now fast forward a couple of months. It's August 1993, and I'm at SeaTac Airport with a group. This is 1993, with a group working with Washington Resettlement in my church. And we are gathered in to welcome our first refugees to Kirkland, the Gersick family, to their new home in Kirkland. And that year, ladies and gentlemen, this country would only accept 2,000 immigrants from the former Yugoslavia. That's all. Eventually, we would bring nearly 20 individuals to Kirkland that year. We would hear amazing stories. I remember Emir Gersick telling his story about Sarajevo. He loved that town. He loved it. He loved the way it was a beacon for diversity, the way Serbs and Croatians and Bosnians lived together and worked together. He was so proud of that town. It was cosmopolitan. And to see it devolve into rape and murder, a place of rape and murder, was just beyond anything he could bear. He told the story, tell me if I'm pronouncing the name of the city correctly. Is it Buchko? Okay, I'm not very good. But anyways, that's where Emir was from. So he told me about the events that happened in that town. And about what happens when a murderous sort of nationalism begins to corrode your country. He told about being rounded up by a group of Serbian soldiers, and he watched as Bosnian men, very young men, some just boys, one after another, were summarily executed right in front of him. And he was the next to be murdered. A gun was put to Emir's head, and he was just about to be shot when an officer happened to go by, a Serbian officer in a car, and saw that he had on a bright red sweater. And for some reason, that red sweater made this officer look at his face. Well, what Emir had going for him was that he was a professional soccer player for that city, and he was recognized, and his life was spared. But as he was taken off, others lost their lives. And where he went from that place of murder was into a concentration camp for a year, where he saw new levels of torture and intolerance and just murder. One of the stories he told was that he was often, when they were put to work, they were often put in Serbian military clothes so that they would possibly be shot by some of their own people. It was just an intolerable situation in that concentration camp, but by the grace of God, he somehow lived through that. So that day, he was saved by a bright red sweater and by someone who remembered that he was a great sports star. Meanwhile, his wife and two sons had a harrowing journey as they made their way to a Croatian town and were able to enter a refugee camp. And then in 1993, resettlement. They came to Kirkland, gracing our town. Later, Emir's father and mother came, then his brothers and his family, and others that weren't even related. They left their homes, they left the homes they knew, their possessions, their friends, their jobs, the land that they loved. Now, a new language for most, a new culture, and new friends. The war and atrocities would continue in Bosnia, and finally, after an outcry from decent people all over the world, we would see some intervention, but it took way too long. So why do we commemorate this war? Why do we need to remember? We need to remember the dead and the innocent, to honor them and renew our pledges that their lives were not lost in vain. We do so to... Do I get to be emotional? I would be emotional. I promised myself I wouldn't do that, but I really am going without a lack of sleep. But this was such an emotional emotional time for me. It was so long ago. I should be able to do this. Anyways, we do this to remind ourselves what unbridled nationalism can do to people. We do this to remember that genocide, ethnic cleansing, and systematic rape are the tools of evil, and evil cannot be allowed. We commemorate because it can happen again if we are not vigilant, if we don't continually fight for the dignity of humankind. It can happen again if we don't stand up in our neighborhoods, in our cities and states for the rights of all citizens. I remember one time I actually had to have somebody come up and read the last few words of my speech, but I'm going to get through this today. We remember so that we can move past dark places in history and recommit to building a culture and a society that proactively ensures that hatred will not grow. Not on our watch, never again. Great, incredible things happen when we go without sleep. Oh, just finally, I want to thank you very much. It was such an honor to be asked to be here. And I want you to know that this experience of helping refugees was one of the reasons I became an elected official. And I urge you to follow the advice of your former speaker, that you can be involved in these things, whether it's locally, it's your park board, whether you look at your city council, whether it's an ad hoc committee, whether it's the state legislature. Believe me, it is so much better to be the person who takes the vote than to be the person who has to lobby for that vote. So I urge you to be involved. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joan. We would like to acknowledge and thank the members of the leadership of the Greater Seattle community who have helped us from the time we have arrived in the United States. Organizations such as Council of the American Islamic Relations, the Anti-Defamation League, the Jewish Federation of Greater Seattle, Peace Catalyst International, numerous mosques, churches, and synagogues stepped up to help and establish relationships with our community. We all thank you. And now I'd like to read a letter from the Temple Beth Am. To the Bosnian community of Seattle, Washington. On behalf of the Jewish Synagogue of Temple Beth Am, we affirm our support and commitment to the Bosnian community of Seattle. We stand with you to applaud the celebration of life and state loudly that such atrocities shall be no more. 20 years have passed and so many brothers, fathers, and sons were lost to the whole world, and so many fled to Washington state with the desire to be free burning in their hearts. But today, we also celebrate 20 years of life, rebirth, family, and hope. As the psalmist wrote, when you give them your breath, life is created, and you renew the face of the earth. Our Jewish community has the duty to preserve all human lives, for each of us was created by Tselem Elohim in the image of God. We are friends and neighbors with those who fled to Seattle years ago, and we celebrate these cherished relationships. Our own tradition gives us insight into the tragedy of genocide, so we must fight for all those who yearn to be free. Aaron Dorfman teaches, as Jews, our responsibility to act should derive from both our immediate historical experience with the Holocaust and from our millennia-old commitment to the preservation of the human life. Temple Beth Am was honored to sponsor the 5 members of the Kandrich family 22 years ago. We have seen them grow, marry, celebrate new life, become American citizens, and thrive into the next generation of leaders. We stand in awe of their success and accomplishments. Likewise, we rejoice in the youth who have thrived in the past 2 decades. Your energy, vigor, and commitment not only to honor those who were lost, but to lead us down the path to justice and freedom. As the prophet Joel said, your old shall dream dreams, and your youth shall see visions. The new voice now leads the charge. Today, we memorialize the souls who were tragically lost, but we pledge our support to fight hated injustice and intolerance which push apart God's children instead of drawing us together. We stand with our Bosnian brothers and sisters during this day of remembrance and loudly proclaim, never again. Shalom, always towards peace. I would like to invite Talia McGill-Kandrich to the podium, please. Italia. Now I'd like to invite the president of the Voices of the Bosnian Genocide, Mirza Veligic, to share a few words.
Thank you. That was such a powerful and moving video. We have gathered here today in solemn remembrance of the thousands of victims, many of them children, of the Srebrenica genocide, on the 20th anniversary of this monumental crime against humanity. The legal terms genocide and crimes against humanity came into use following the horrors of the Holocaust in order to allow us to conceptualize and to talk about the organized destruction of a people, and along with them, the destruction of a civilization that values human life. They also came into use so that individuals responsible for immense human suffering could be charged for crime and brought to justice. The term genocide helps us to grasp the actions and the motives of perpetrators of mass atrocities, committed in places such as Auschwitz and Srebrenica and Rwanda, that present us with almost unimaginable evil and cruelty. While genocide is always destructive, it is never spontaneous. The Bosnian genocide was a vast criminal enterprise, carefully organized by highly intelligent and driven individuals who were all too aware of their actions and the consequences they would have. These individuals drew on support from popular support. Those who supported Milosevic, Karadzic, and Mladic believed that their lives would be better after non-Serbs were either killed or forced into exile to create a greater Serbian state. Those who deny or justify the Srebrenica genocide today, including many in the Serbian and Bosnian Serb politicians, leadership continue to firmly hold on to that belief. To them, diversity and tolerance, which we cherish, are sources of weakness and not sources of strength. It is now clear that the virulent and lethal ideology that has been existent since the 19th century in Serbia will unfortunately continue to play a dominant role in both Serbian and Bosnian Serb body politic for the foreseeable future. And that is why we must change. 20 years have passed since the Srebrenica genocide. Time does not stand still, and neither can we. The future success of our community will depend on the choices we make and the opportunities we seize going forward. A new generation of Bosnian-Americans born after the genocide is growing up, and we have an opportunity to teach them about our community's painful history and cherished values in order to help them succeed in building a better future. For the past 20 years, America has been Bosnia's strongest ally. In the coming years, we will have the opportunity to further strengthen this vital and mutually beneficial relationship. Bosnian genocide survivors and refugees have achieved great success, as we've seen today, and have in turn contributed greatly to the United States. Because they were welcomed with open arms and given the opportunity to fully employ their ingenuity, knowledge, and skills to build better lives for themselves and for their families. Here in the United States, we have the opportunity to move our community forward out of the shadow of genocide. This will require us to acknowledge and learn from the past. Our failure to remember and to learn from the massacres that were committed by Draža Mihailovic's Chetniks during World War II in the service of the greater Serbian ideology directly contributed to our unpreparedness in defending ourselves against the genocidal onslaught that began in April of 1992. All of us here today remember the mass atrocities that were committed in Srebrenica in July of 1995, but most of us have probably never heard of similar massacres that took place in Srebrenica in January of 1942, in which over 1,000 Bosniak civilians were killed by the Chetniks during the murderous ethnic cleansing campaign along the Drina River Valley. Learning from the past in order not to repeat the same mistakes will involve both teaching history and making it applicable to future generations. Moving out of the shadow of genocide will require us not just to embrace the past, but also to embrace the virtues of our community and to show our love and our compassion. Our community's healing will in no small part depend on the good work we do for others, as others have done for us. Acknowledging the help and the support that we have received over these years from our friends, our neighbors, many of whom are with us today, and showing our solidarity with the oppressed is a way for us to give thanks and to give back. Most importantly, our ability to move forward to a brighter future will depend on us seeking justice for the victims of genocide and knowing that we will not allow ourselves to be victims again. Over the past 20 years, our community has built a beautiful new home and has become an integral part of Seattle's welcoming, diverse, and eccentric family. In a spirit similar to that well-known Pemco commercial, our young Bosnian-American community can tell the longer established communities in Seattle that we're a lot like you, a little different. In closing, I would like to thank all of you, especially our friends who have lived outside of Seattle, for coming to this commemoration and for remembering our community's fathers, brothers, husbands, and sons, whose lives were taken so brutally 20 years ago. On this day, I would ask you to please say a silent prayer in your own language and in your own plea for the mothers of Srebrenica and for the lost family members. I would also ask you to pray that in the future when we hold these programs, we'll be able to invite our Serbian and our Bosnian Serb neighbors, fellow countrymen, to come so that we can commemorate these type of events together. May we continue to love and support each other as we have done today, and may we never forget the Bosnian Genocide. Thank you.
Thank you, Mirza. We have two more short speeches. I'd like to invite Mehmet Hasakovic to the podium to do a recitation, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Pozivam za svjedoka mastionicu i pero i sve što se perom piše. Pozivam za svjedoka nesebičnu tamu sumraka i noć i sve što ona oživi. Pozivam za svjedoka mjesec kad na jedra izvoru kad zabijeli. Pozivam za svjedoka sudnji dan, dušu što sama sebe kori. Pozivam za svjedoka vrijeme, početak i svršetak svega, da je svaki čovjek uvijek na gubitku, samo ne oni koji vjeruju i dobra djela čine, i samo ne oni koji jedni drugima preporučuju istinu, i samo ne oni koji jedni drugima preporučuju strpljenje. Draga braćo i sestre, htio sam sve da vas vidim i da me svi vidite. U životu govorio baš o sebi. Nikada mi nije bilo važnije ono što ću da kažem, ali ne želim ništa da postignem s tim. Ništa osim da vidim saučešće u vašim očima. Čekali ste i htjeli ste da ostanemo zajedno, da se pogledamo oči u oči, tužni zbog smrti nedužna čovjeka, uznemireni zbog zločina. I vas se tiče taj zločin, jer znate, ko ubije nedužna čovjeka, kao da je sve ljude pobio. Sve su nas ubili nebrojeno puta, braćo moja ubijena, ali užasnuti smo kad nam pogodi nekoga ko nam je najdraži. Možda bi trebao da ih mrzim, ali ne mogu. Ja nemam dva srca, jedno za mržnju, drugo za ljubav. ovo što imam sad, zna samo za tugu. Moja molitva, moja pokora, moj život i moja smrt, sve to pripada Bogu, stvoritelju svjetova, ali moja tuga pripada meni. Mog brata Anura više nema i hoću samo to da kažem, moj Bože, ojačaj njim mrtvim snagu moju, njim mrtvim i nesahranjenim po Božijim zakonima, neviđenim i neotplakanim od svojih najbližih pred veliki put sa kojeg povratka nema. Nisam ga spasio živog, nisam ga vidio mrtvog i sad nemam nikog osim sebe i tebe, Bože moj. Daj mi snage da ne klonem od ljudske i bratske žalošću i da se ne otrujem mržnjom. Ponavljam riječi Nuhove, rastavi mene i njih. Živimo na zemlji samo jedan dan ili manje. Moj Bože, daj mi snage da oprostim. Jer ko oprosti, on je najveći. A znam, zaboravit ne mogu. A vas, draga braće i sestre, molim, ne zamjerite mi zbog ovih riječi ako su vas rastužile ili zaboljele. Idite svojim kućama, ostavite me sama s mojom nesrećom, a lakše mi je sad, podijelio sam je s vama. Amin, ja rabi.
to do an interfaith prayer.
Ako mi zaboravimo tebe, nemoj ti zaboraviti nas. Ako pogriješimo, podari nam snagu Ademovog pokajanja. Ako nas zadesi nesreća, pouči nas Nuhovoj lađi spasa. Ako nas zamrači krivovjerje, osvijetli nam put Ibrahimovog pravovjerja. Ako nas uhvati strah od silnika, osposobi nas Musaovom pravu. Ako nam se ponudi mržnja, spasi nas Isaovim ljubavim. Ako budemo protjerani iz domova naših, osnaži nas Muhammedovom željom za povratak domovima našim. Bože svemogući, ujedini naša srca u vjeri i ljubavi. Učvrsti korake naše u istini i pravdi. Osnaži volju našu u bratstvu i slozi. Udruži misli naše u domu i domovini. Bože pravedni, molimo te da nasilnicima oduzmeš mač, a slabijima da podariš moć vjere u istinu i pravdu. Molimo te, Bože naš, Bože, da tuga bude nada, da osveta bude pravda, da majčina suza bude molitva, da se više nikada nikome ne ponovi Srebrenica.
Father, we are all in your presence this afternoon. Our hearts are torn as we've witnessed and heard vivid remembrance and memories of the pain of the genocide. So, Father, we honor the men and women, the sisters, the brothers, the children who died by remembering. Thank you for the holy moment that we can all be together and remember together. And may our hearts be changed. May our hearts take the admonitions we've heard this afternoon to never forget, the admonitions to see what is our part. What can we do? What are you calling us to? That we could be the people of peace in our generation. So we ask this act of mercy from you to help us in this. We pray in the name of the God of heaven and earth. Amen.
Na kraju zamolimo vas da učenjem Fatihe nekim vidom druge dove odamo počast šehidima Bosne i Hercegovine i šehidima Srebrenice. Lillahi al-Fatiha.
Thank you for your persistence to remember and honor victims of the Bosnian Genocide. Thank you.